exact problem we're going to solve today.
And of course, there's a formal name for this whole process. It's called capital budgeting. It's really just the framework businesses use to sift through all their options and pick the projects that are going to create the most value, making sure every single dollar is working as hard as it possibly can.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the two main ways you can even measure a project's value. Then we'll dive into two different toolkits, the really precise discounting methods and the more straightforward quick check tools. And finally, we'll talk about how you make that final, tough call when you just can't fund everything.
This brings us to probably the single biggest question in all of capital budgeting, one that really splits every technique right down the middle. Does the timing of when you get your money actually matter? And the answer to that question creates two completely different ways of looking at our million-dollar problem.
So, on one side, you've got what we call discounting criteria. These methods are all based on a core idea in finance. A dollar today is worth more than a dollar next year. Why? Because you can invest that dollar today and start earning a return on it. Then, on the other side, you have the non-discounting criteria. These methods, well, they just ignore all that. A dollar in 5 years is worth the exact same as a dollar in your hand right now.
Let's kick things off with the precision instruments, the discounting methods. These are really considered the gold standard in finance, and for good reason. They are super rigorous because they bake in that critical concept, the time value of money.
And first up is the heavyweight champion, net present value, or NPV. What this tool does is tell you exactly how much value, in today's dollars, a project is going to add to your company. It takes all the cash you expect to get in the future, figures out what each of those payments is worth today, adds them all up, and then subtracts what you paid for the project in the first place.
So, take a look at this example. We've got an initial cost of $800 and then a stream of cash coming in over the next 4 years. Now, the key is we don't just add up those future numbers. We have to discount them back to see what they're worth today. And when you run the numbers for this project, you get a positive NPV. The decision rule here couldn't be simpler. If the NPV is positive, you give it the green light. It means the project is going to add value.
Now, the beauty of NPV is that it directly tells you how much wealthier your shareholders will be. It's objective, and it understands that time is money. The main catch? Figuring out the right discount rate to use can be tricky. And honestly, the whole concept can be a little abstract for managers who aren't deep in the finance weeds every day.
All right, next up in our precision toolkit is the internal rate of return, or IRR. The best way to think about IRR is that it's the project's own internal, built-in rate of return. It answers a simple question. What's the interest rate where this project exactly breaks even? You find that rate, and then you just compare it to how much it costs you to borrow money. Finding the IRR usually takes a bit of trial and error. You're basically hunting for that one special discount rate that makes the NPV hit zero perfectly. For this project, that magic number turns out to be 15.37%. So here's the bottom line. If it costs your company, say, 10% to get a loan, and this project is earning over 15%, that's a fantastic deal. You say yes.
And this leads us to a classic debate in finance. See, NPV gives you a clear answer in dollars, which, technically speaking, is the best measure of value creation. But managers often really like IRR because thinking in percentages is just more intuitive. This project gives us a 15% return is just a much easier thing to say and understand in a meeting than this project has an NPV of $76.70.
Okay, so we've seen the precision tools. Now let's switch gears and look at our second toolkit. These are the non-discounting methods. They're not nearly as accurate as NPV or IRR, but they are incredibly handy for a quick, back-of-the-envelope check on a project.
First in this kit is the payback period. And this one answers a very, very simple question. How long does it take to get my initial investment back? That's it. It's all about speed. If you're a company that's worried about having cash on hand, knowing this number is absolutely vital.
The rule here is dead simple. The shorter the payback, the better. But, and this is a huge but, this method has a massive, glaring weakness. It completely ignores every single penny that comes in after you've been paid back. A project could turn into a cash-gushing monster in year 4, but if it has a 3-year payback, this method just doesn't see it. It's really more of a risk measure than a profitability measure.
Next, we have the accounting rate of return, or ARR. This also gives you a nice percentage return, but with a huge difference. It uses the accounting profits from your income statement, not the actual cash changing hands like NPV and IRR do. And that is a fundamentally different way to look at a project's return.
The good thing here is that accounting numbers are usually pretty easy to find.
The bad thing is that profit isn't the same as cash, and it can be a bit subjective. And just like the payback period, ARR totally ignores the time value of money. So yeah, it's a handy tool, but it's a blunt one.
Okay, so you've run all your projects through these toolkits. You've found, say, 3 projects that all have positive NPVs. They are all, by definition, winners. The problem? You've only got enough budget for 1, maybe 2 of them. This is where we hit the final and most realistic challenge of all.
This common situation has a name: capital rationing. It's the reality for pretty much every company out there. You almost always have more great ideas than you have cold, hard cash. So you can't just say yes to every good project that comes along. You have to prioritize and pick the mix of projects that gives you the biggest bang for your limited buck.
And thankfully, there's a really clear method for doing this. First, you line up all your good projects. Then, you calculate something called the profitability index, or PI, for each one, which is basically just a measure of how much value you get for every dollar you invest. Then, you just rank them from highest PI to lowest, and you fund them right down that list until the money runs out.
And this table shows it perfectly. SkyT has a $60,000 budget and 4 good projects. Now, if they just picked the project with the biggest NPV, they'd choose Project Z. But by using the profitability index to rank them, they can see a much better strategy. They should fund Project W first, then Project Z. That combination gives them a way higher total NPV than just picking Z alone, and it uses up most of their budget in the most efficient way possible.
And as our source material from Ross and his co-authors puts it so well, this isn't just some theoretical exercise. This is a fundamental reality of doing business, having more great opportunities than you can actually afford. And that's exactly why having a smart ranking system is so crucial.
And really, that's the big takeaway from all of this. The goal of capital budgeting isn't just to give a thumbs up or thumbs down to projects one by one. It's about strategically deploying your limited resources to find the combination of projects that creates the absolute most value for the entire company.
So I'll just leave you with this final question to think about. Let's say the simple payback period says a project is a home run, but the complex, theoretically perfect NPV says it's a loser. Which metric do you trust with your $1 million? The answer really gets to the heart of the trade